Hey, movie recap here. Today I'm going to explain a 2017 film titled Gifted. Frank Adler instructs his niece, Mary, to prepare for school. He informs her that he is preparing a special breakfast for her. Mary is hesitant and makes excuses such as who will look after her monocular cat, Fred. Frank assures her that Fred will be fine. She requests the special breakfast she was told about, but Frank instead serves her a box of Kellogg's cereal with special written on it. Frank drops Mary off at the bus stop, where she begins her first day of school. Roberta, Frank's next-door neighbor, follows him back to his house. She expresses her concern about Mary going to school. She fears that something will happen to her. Frank looks nervous. Later, Mary arrives at school, looking as if she'd rather be anywhere but here. Bonnie, her teacher, walks around the classroom asking the students simple math problems. Mary looks at her and the rest of the class with disdain, as she thinks Bonnie's questions are simple. The teacher begins to ask Mary more difficult questions. Mary responds quickly. As the questions become more difficult, especially when it comes to multiplication, Mary pauses for a moment, which Bonnie interprets as her cue to stop. Mary correctly answers the multiplication question after a few moments of silence. Bonnie takes out the calculator to double-check. She is perplexed and realizes Mary is not your typical child. Miss Davis, the principal, is introduced to the first graders. The class treats her with dignity. Mary acts casually, yelling at Davis and Bonnie to call Frank and tell him to get her out of here. Frank arrives later that day to pick up Mary. Bonnie speaks with him. She tries to persuade him that Mary is not a typical child. Frank waves her off, explaining that it was just the Jacob-Trachtenberg method that Mary used to calculate the math questions Bonnie asked in class. Bonnie points out that Mary is only 7 years old, to which Frank responds that he learned the same method when he was 8, implying that it isn't a big deal. Bonnie later looks into the Jacob-Trachtenberg method after hearing about it from a friend. Frank is constructing a boat. Mary asks if they can take the boat for a spin. They spend time at the beach together. They talk about a variety of topics, and Frank tells Mary that her mother would want her to make friends. Mary takes Fred to school and introduces him to her classmates. She informs them that he has only one eye. The kids ask her how he lost his eye. Mary responds that she is unaware of that because she discovered him in this state in the trash and, in a sense, rescued him. Bonnie develops feelings for Mary. She gives her extra homework knowing she'll finish it faster than most students. Mary smiles at Bonnie, and Bonnie reciprocates with an affectionate smile of her own. They get along well in class. Bonnie conducts additional research on the Adler family, beginning with Frank Adler's personal information, but her efforts are futile. She eventually reads about Frank's sister Diane Adler. Diane is a math prodigy who excels in school. Seymour Shankland, an MIT professor, describes her as exceptional, saying she has an exquisite mind that could help the world. Bonnie continues reading and discovers that Diane committed suicide at the age of 27. With her brother, Frank, she left behind a daughter named Mary. Bonnie arrives at Ferg, their neighborhood bar, to meet Frank. Frank reveals himself to her. He tells her that he was late for a date when Diane showed up at his house unannounced with a baby Mary. She informed Frank that she needed to speak with him. Frank dismissed her, saying he'd listen to her after he returned from his date. When he returned home that night, he discovered Mary on the couch and Diane on the bathroom floor. Though it isn't entirely his fault, he believes he should have known better. Bonnie asks about other family members. Frank responds that Mary's biological father abandoned Diane after only a month. His mother is a strict, unyielding woman who is a true Britisher at heart. Mary is riding the bus to school. She notices a classmate climbing the bus with a well-made project in her hand. She is initially concerned, believing that her project is inadequate. The youngster is attempting to make his way. A 12-year-old bullies him, causing him to trip and damage his work. The bully and the other kids start laughing and teasing him. Mary comes to his aid and orders the children to stop. She smacks the bully across the face with a book. Later, as Frank walks into Mary's school, he passes the bully, who is bleeding from his nose. He immediately checks in on Mary to ensure her well-being. The principal, Davis, makes Frank understand that beating people up is not permitted. Frank tells her that he will make sure Mary understands this, despite the fact that he is proud of her for standing up to a bully. The principal suggests that Mary attend the Oaks Academy for Gifted Education, where she can be educated at a level that matches her capabilities. Frank brings up financial concerns. She guarantees Mary a full-ride scholarship. Frank declines the offer, stating that Mary should be treated as a regular child and sent to a regular school. Bonnie asks if he is certain about his decision, to which he responds that he is unsure. Mary apologizes to her classmates for her inappropriate behavior. She and the rest of the class applaud Justin, her classmate, and tell him that his zoo was the best art project. Frank and Mary arrive home to find Evelyn, her grandmother, waiting for them. Evelyn brings her a fancy laptop and a book by Charles Zimmer on advanced algebra. Mary informs her that she has already read the book and is now studying differential equations. Frank makes Evelyn thank her. Evelyn is dissatisfied with Frank's living conditions and confronts him about it. Frank and Evelyn have lunch together. She expresses concern for Mary and wishes for her to live in a better environment. She informs Frank that the authorities will be contacted. Diane would not want her to have custody of Mary, according to Frank. Evelyn describes Mary's mother, Diane, and Frank as frail. She informs him subtly that this case will be heard in court. Frank and Mary spend time together, and she questions him about God and faith. He claims to have his own opinion, so he has no right to influence her decision. Mary brings up Roberta. He claims that Roberta has faith and that she adores her. He tells her that he knows everyone will end up together, and that's all that matters. Roberta demonstrates her deep concern for them by appearing in court to assist Frank in obtaining custody of Mary from his mother. Evelyn makes it clear that she intends to bring Mary with her to Massachusetts. Frank wishes for her to remain with him. Later, Frank asks Roberta to keep an eye on Mary for the night. Roberta agrees, noting that she is only a neighbor and not a blood relative or someone whose opinion is valued, but she loves Mary very much. Mary spends the night at Roberta's, singing and laughing with her. Bonnie and Frank run into each other at the bar. She informs him that she did not leak the information to Davis. Over drinks, they become closer and have interesting conversations. Bonnie tells him she can't afford to be intimate with him, but they end up spending the night together. Mary is looking for a DVD at Frank's house. She discovers Bonnie sneaking out of Frank's room and makes a joke about it. When Frank learns of this, he becomes enraged, claiming that he will be unable to live his own life for an extended period of time. She becomes upset and leaves. Frank later apologizes to Mary, and they reconcile. As Frank checks his mail outside and discovers that Mary will be spending 2 days in Boston with her grandmother, Roberta slams him for his irresponsible behavior. When Mary and her grandmother travel to Boston, she sees family photos, including childhood photos of her mother and grandmother. Bonnie and Frank become even closer when they return to Florida. Evelyn drives Mary to university, where she informs her about the 7 millennium problems. A photograph of Grigory Perelman, who worked on the Poincare conjecture, is shown to Mary. Evelyn recalls how Diane could have been honored and her picture displayed if she had completed the Navier-Stokes equation. Mary expresses a desire to be featured on the wall as well. Professor Shankland assigns her a difficult equation to solve. After noticing that she is unable to solve it for quite some time, he tells Evelyn maybe Mary isn't that capable after all. Evelyn is furiously walking with her, regretting her decision to come to Shankland in the first place, when Mary informs her that the equation was incorrect and thus unsolvable. Mary corrects the equation as they return to Shankland. She solves it all the way to the end, leaving Shankland exhausted. When they return home, Mary informs Frank that, while Evelyn is pleasant, she does not wish to live with her. He assures her that she will not be leaving. Mary meets Pat, a social worker who asks her various questions about her life. Mary mentions watching Ultimate Fighting Championships with Frank. She also informs her that he has promised to keep her around and that he is a nice guy. Pat asks her why she thinks that, and she responds that Frank has always wanted her, regardless of her intelligence. Mary's biological father appears in court. He wants Evelyn to have custody of Mary. Mary's father is embarrassed when Frank's attorney informs him that he doesn't even know his daughter's middle name and has never met her in person. In court, Frank triumphs. He leads her to her vehicle. She expresses her displeasure with being at odds with her son. They've always been at odds, according to Frank. Mary locks herself in her room and sobs uncontrollably because her deadbeat father does not come to see her while he is in town. Later, Frank drives Mary and Roberta to the hospital. They are all waiting for the birth of a baby boy. Frank tells Mary that she was born exactly like this and that everyone was overjoyed. He informs her that he informed everyone about Mary's birth. Mary rejoices with the families in the hospital. Evelyn will testify in court later. Frank's attorney notices her baseball reference. He and Evelyn have a heated argument about Diane never being allowed to do anything other than study mathematics. She never participated in sports or led a normal life. Frank's lawyer mentions Paul, Diane's first love when she was 17. Paul and Diane escaped to a ski resort in Vermont. He criticizes Evelyn for suing him, filing kidnapping charges, and causing Diane distress, which led to her attempted suicide in 1999. Evelyn claims it was nothing serious and that she did her best to be a good mother to Diane. Frank testifies that he is a freelancer and repairs boats. Evelyn's attorney raises concerns about Mary's health, education, and life. Frank is adamant that he wants her to be a normal kid. The attorney also mentions how Mary assaulted the school bully and once assaulted a man. Frank claims he was acting in self-defense against a drunk man in a bar and admits to spending the night in jail as a result of the incident. Later that evening, Frank's attorney suggests temporarily placing Mary with a foster family. When she reaches the age of 12, she will be able to make a decision in court about her living situation. Tampa is home to the foster family. Frank can easily visit her because she is only 30 minutes away. Evelyn would also be allowed to visit. Having run out of options, he sends Mary to live in Tampa. She doesn't take it easy, she cries and begs Frank not to abandon her, reminding him that he promised not to abandon her. Roberta and Frank are saddened by Mary's absence. Later, Frank tells Bonnie that he considered turning Mary over to child services several times but couldn't bring himself to do so. He holds himself responsible for the mess. He tries to visit Mary, but the foster father informs him that she does not wish to see him. Frank is devastated. He is consoled by Roberta. Bonnie notices an adoptable pet poster with Fred's picture on it. She sends it to Frank, who rushes over to Animal Services and saves Fred and 2 other cats. Evelyn is the one who first placed Fred for adoption. When Frank shows Evelyn the documents proving that Diane did, in fact, finish the proof for the Navier-Stokes equation, Frank and Roberta are able to reclaim Mary. He informs Evelyn that Diane requested that this be published following her mother's death. That is, Evelyn did not grant Diane's wishes. Frank and Mary reconcile and are overjoyed to be together as they drive away with Roberta. Evelyn bursts into tears as she sees the tear-stained notes with doodles on them. She dials MIT and speaks with Shankland. Mary attends university and is picked up by Frank. They talk in the car. He hands her a book about existence written by René Descartes. She makes a joke about it with him. Frank drops her off at the park, where she joins the other Girl Scouts and happily plays with them. In the distance, Frank smiles warmly at Bonnie. Thank you for tuning in. Please subscribe, it motivates us to make more videos like this. Evelyn is furiously walking with her, regretting her decision to come to Shankland in the first place, when Mary informs her that the equation was incorrect and thus unsolvable. Mary corrects the equation as they return to Shankland. She solves it all the way to the end, leaving Shankland exhausted. When they return home, Mary informs Frank that, while Evelyn is pleasant, she does not wish to live with her.